What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Pick Six podcast. Today is Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. It's one of those 2 days. I like to call it Tuesday because today is Tuesdays with Tyler. Even if you are listening to this on Wednesday, it's being recorded on Tuesday. Of course, well, Brinson's not here because he hates Tuesdays and he hates Tyler. So why would he show up? Tyler, how you doing, man?
What's going on? How you doing? I think this is the first time it's just been me and you.
Well, you know what? It's more comfortable, feels more homey.
Oh, absolutely.
And, it's always nice to do a one-on-one chat for the first time ever on a podcast together.
Yeah. I mean, why would we need Will for this? I mean, he's off doing God knows what. I mean, obviously the behind the scenes drama between me and him is just palpable at this point. We can't even be on a podcast together. No, I don't know what Will's doing, but he's probably doing very important work if I know Will.
He has sent me multiple emails this week just saying, I can't be on with Tyler. I can't work with him. We're not on the same page anymore. I don't get that guy. What's up with him? And I was like, I'll do it, Brinson. I will just do it. I will be there. So anyway, Brinson's not here, but we are still going to be talking everything that we normally talk about on a day like this with Tyler. And that is, let's look at a few games and their betting trends. We're also going to touch on the updated Super Bowl odds, look at the Super Bowl favorites and the MVP favorites. So we have a lot to dive into. Let's get this thing started, Tyler, with let's talk some Bills at Ravens. Buffalo favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is 51.5. What are your thoughts on this game right now?
I mean, what's crazy is if you just want to look big picture, first of all, this could be an AFC Championship matchup with the way that obviously the Buffalo Bills have been playing minus that game against Miami last week and the way Lamar Jackson is playing. I'm sure we're going to talk about him a little bit later when we're talking MVPs, but you look at the kind of way that both of these teams are set up. They're set up to have long playoff runs. So for me, this is just going to be one of those matchups that I know it's super early in the season. I know we're only in week 4, but I mean, you're looking at potential playoff, potential number 1 seed kind of, factoring into this type of a game. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins are 3-0 right now. They're at top of the AFC, but we expect both the Bills and the Ravens to be in that conversation. And if all of a sudden these tiebreakers early in the year start to make an impact, that's something that we're going to have to watch here. But for me, I think it's a good bounce back spot for Buffalo. It's always weird whenever these AFC teams or really any of these teams that are from the North go down to the hot weather in the South, in Miami. I've seen it a million times watching the New England Patriots over the years. It's the same thing with Buffalo. It's always weird. Just weird stuff happens when you go down south, and it's the same thing across the NFL too. So for me, I think this is a good bounce back spot for them. Obviously, you say bounce back, they're a road favorite going into Baltimore, but this is a defense with the Ravens that, it's not great. I don't know if it's if it's anything to write super home about, especially against the pass. For me, the Patriots last week, I don't think anybody's looking at them saying that they're like a legitimate juggernaut as a passing offense. I know Mac Jones had a bunch of interceptions, but those were seemingly on him. He had a number of bad throws. I don't know if that was necessarily the Ravens taking advantage or creating turnovers. I feel like they just kind of took advantage of Jones's mishaps. I don't know if Josh Allen's going to do that. And I think this is a good bounce back spot for Buffalo here. I don't mind laying the points on the road for them.
Yeah, and you did mention in your early odds story a fun fact that the Bills are 6-1-1 against the spread in their past 8 games following a straight-up loss. That is very enticing if you like the Bills. And one thing that you mentioned is that the Dolphins are 3-0, which makes this feel like a Scooby-Doo game. You know how Old Man Withers would say, well, I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you pesky kids. And the Ravens and Dolphins, or the Ravens and Bills, are both thinking, well, we would be undefeated if it wasn't for those pesky Dolphins, because they both played games that they probably should have won. I mean, Baltimore blew a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter. The Bills more than doubled the yardage output of the Dolphins. I believe Ben Volin pointed out a stat that there's only been 2 teams that have won a game over the past 20 years when they have been outgained by 275 yards or more. One of those games was the Dolphins over the Bills. So this is a fascinating game. And you mentioned the Ravens defense. I think if I'm Baltimore or if I'm a Ravens fan, that's probably the one thing that scares me right now. The Ravens are giving up 353 yards per game through the air. And to like give you an idea of how crazy that is, there is no other team in the NFL that's even giving up 300 yards a game. So the Ravens are just, everyone's throwing on them. I mean, it's not like they faced Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. They have faced Mac Jones, Joe Flacco, and Tua. So it's crazy that everyone's just throwing at will. And now they have Josh Allen coming in, who's the NFL's leading passer. He's the only quarterback who's thrown over 1,000 yards. So yeah, I think I'm with you here. And I know that the over-under has been going down.
That's because I think the weather is going to be a factor here. I mean, you look at both of these teams, you would say, okay, especially with Buffalo's secondary, maybe still be banged up with losing some safeties, obviously still without Tre'Davious White, and obviously the issues that we were both just highlighting with the secondary of the Ravens. You'd say, okay, you have 2 MVP caliber quarterbacks. Why wouldn't this be a bonanza of offense? But it looks like there's going to be some sort of weather impacting this. I'm trying to look at it right now. It does say rain in the forecast.
I was pulling that up as you were talking, and so basically there's an 80% chance of rain on Sunday, which, you know, fewer passing yards, lower scoring if there's rain, but around 1 p.m. it's supposed to be light rain. So maybe the over-under is something you wait until the radar figures itself out around 10 a.m. Sunday morning.
And definitely watch the wind, too. I mean, I'm just looking at the Weather Channel. It's just a brief thing, so I don't have an hourly breakdown, but 13-mile-an-hour winds, you know, yeah, it might be a little less severe in terms of rain. And for teams that, you know, especially the Ravens who like to run the football, I don't know if the rain's going to impact them too much. The wind, though, will impact the passing game severely. So that's just something to kind of keep an eye on there. But if everything starts to clear up, you know, this is a game that has a potential where if it's good weather, you're going north of 50 points here for sure.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like we were saying, is that this did, I think the over-under opened 54.5. So this is a number that's just been going down, and all of a sudden there's no rain on Sunday, then boom, you smash it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to our next game because it's your boy Tom Brady and the Buccaneers hosting the Chiefs, and Kansas City is a 2.5-point favorite, which I would say they're a 2.5-point road favorite, but it might be a 2.5-point neutral field favorite because we don't even know if this game's gonna be played in Tampa Bay necessarily. What are your thoughts here, man?
Yeah, this is the interesting, you know, aspect to this story because of the hurricane that's coming to the Tampa area. I believe it's touching down over the next 24, 48 hours. It's kind of going to be the most severe, but we obviously don't know what the damage is going to be in the aftermath of it. The Buccaneers have already evacuated from Tampa. They're practicing down in Miami, although they won't use, or reportedly ESPN's reporting that they won't use Hard Rock Stadium as a alternate stadium for them to play this game potentially, because the reports indicate that the NFL does not want to use Florida resources to help facilitate that game if those resources can be used to help the Tampa area. So that was kind of the crux of that. What they suggested in that report was that the NFL may be looking at the Midwest. So, you know, that is pointing to maybe Minneapolis. You're going to US Bank Stadium, the home of the Vikings, who are obviously in London taking on the New Orleans Saints. So that could be an option for them. And that's what's going to be interesting here when we start looking at this spread. You know, yeah, the Buccaneers defense has been, you know, playing great, and you're, you know, all of a sudden you're, you know, going home. You feel like, okay, you're going to get Mike Evans back. Maybe the health starts to turn elsewhere at the wide receiver position. So maybe this could be kind of a turning of the tide, especially with the Chiefs kind of looking a little bit disjointed offensively against the Indianapolis Colts last week. But now you're starting talking about kind of moving travel plans around. It's a little bit concerning here if you're trying to get anything with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, and even if the game's not moved, the Buccaneers are moving. They have already moved. They shipped their football operations down to South Florida. They are in Miami the rest of the week because the Dolphins don't need their practice facility, because the Dolphins will be in Cincinnati for a Thursday game. And that's not easy because that's like a little mini road trip you have to take in the middle of the week. And then if the game is in Tampa Bay, you have to fly back to Tampa and play that Sunday. And you know, we heard Tom Brady talk about on his podcast Monday night, just that, hey, we can't use this as an excuse, but it's definitely a hurdle that the team will have to overcome. And one reason the NFL has not announced whether this game will be moved is because the forecast for Sunday in Tampa Bay is sunny and perfect. The problem is that you don't know if the hurricane is going to damage the city, cause major damage around Tampa. And if that happens, then you have to think about relocating the game. And like Tyler said, hurricane's supposed to make landfall late Wednesday or Thursday. And so I would think the NFL will finalize the location by Friday. But yeah, I think this is an interesting game just because the Chiefs, their last game, the Colts game, it just felt like they gave it away. They made so many dumb mistakes, especially on special teams. And it's just errors you don't expect from an Andy Reid team. You don't expect to see the Chiefs make because they've been so good for so long. They don't make a bunch of dumb mistakes in games. And so I don't know how I feel, but with the Bucs doing all this traveling, I feel like I got to give the edge to Kansas City here.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. Again, I'm looking at it at Caesars now. The Chiefs are -2.5. The over/under 45. That's going to see movement once we get clarity of where this game is going to take place. Obviously, if all of a sudden, like we're saying, it does go back to Raymond James Stadium and everything's fine, then maybe that moves more towards a pick 'em, or maybe is it 1.5? Is it 1 point for you're laying for Kansas City there? That remains to be seen. But yeah, we still have to figure out what that's going to look like. But it does come down to the wide receivers for me. If we're just strictly talking about the matchup, it looked like in that game, yeah, Kansas City made a ton of, mistakes, and they kind of, really lost that game on themselves against Indianapolis. But that was one of the instances where it really felt like they were missing Tyreek Hill, or at least somebody other than Travis Kelce that Patrick Mahomes has a rapport with. It still feels like he's trying to figure things out with Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, all those new faces, MVS, and it just feels a little disjointed offensively. They don't really know what they want to do in the passing game. And the same thing can be said, obviously, for Tampa Bay. Yes, there are weapons there that Tom Brady's familiar with. The problem is they're not on the field. Mike Evans is suspended. He's coming back, so that's good. We still don't know about Chris Godwin. They're trying to getting Cole Beasley off the street to kind of build in some rapport. So for me, that's the biggest question there. I think both of these defenses are capable of combating each other pretty well, and not necessarily a wash, because I think I would still give it to Tampa Bay the edge there in terms of defense, but I just don't know what the offense for Tampa Bay around Tom Brady is going to look like, which makes me lean more towards Kansas City figuring things out offensively.
Tyler, whoever thought we would have a conversation about a game involving Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, and we don't trust the offenses? What's going on here?
It's the same thing last week. I mean, it was Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. It's Armageddon. I don't know what's happening between these guys.
This offensive dud last week.
This should be a awesome matchup, but for unfortunate reasons, not even from the Hurricane. It's more just the Kansas City Chiefs offense at the skill positions not clicking as quickly as we want to, and obviously the health of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers not being where we want it right now. That's getting in the way of what this could be a high-flying affair, even with those defenses. But I think because of all the moving around, because of the issues on both sides, I do wonder if the under at 45, again, a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady game at 45 feels like it's an automatic over, but I almost feel like the circumstances suggest us going down under here at 45.
Yeah, especially after watching the Brady and Rodgers game just get 26 points. And Mahomes is coming off a game where the Chiefs and Colts only totaled 37 points. So, if you don't trust these offenses, that does seem like the smarter play.
And I'll tell you this, both of these teams just came off of a loss, so it's a trend worth noting. It's the under for the Chiefs, 6-2 in their last games following a straight up loss. The Buccaneers, the under is 5-1 in their last 6 games following a straight up loss. Oh, actually, excuse me, it's 7-0 in their last 7 games following a straight up loss. So the under trends favorably here, but with both of these teams coming off a loss.
Go under. And also you noted that the Buccaneers are 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 games following a straight up loss. So another wrinkle to consider, because you don't see Tom Brady lose consecutive games too often. Tyler, this brings us to my favorite game of the week and maybe in football history. And it will be one we'll be talking about for ages, because there are going to be white Tiger helmets on the field in Cincinnati on Thursday night. And I'm already excited. and it's the Bengals, it's the Dolphins. Dolphins are 3.5-point underdogs, one of the two undefeated teams in the NFL, and they are a 3.5-point dog on the road. How do you feel about this game?
Yeah, I love the Dolphins in this spot. I know that probably breaks your heart, but and I love the white tiger uniforms. I think it's awesome. But this is an interesting spot here for Miami. I almost want to jump on this now because I feel like Tua Tagovailoa is going to play in this game. I don't know if there's going to be any sort of concussion or any other sort of injury that kind of derails him from playing in this game. But even if it does, I just don't know if a Mike McDaniel-led offense is particularly prone to turnovers. I feel like he's kind of has a pretty buttoned-up offense in terms of not giving the ball away to the opposition, and that was basically what helped springboard Cincinnati to that blowout win last week. I think it was 4 turnovers that they were able to kind of take advantage of there. So if all of a sudden you're talking about a 3-0 Dolphins team with a healthy Tua, I would love to take that field goal with the hook going into a hostile environment in Cincinnati on a short week. I just feel like this might be a good spot for them to kind of maybe not necessarily pull out the win, but definitely keep this thing close.
Yeah, it does feel like it will be a close game. Even as the most ardent Bengals homer, I will be willing to admit that. The one thing that I think worries me if about taking the Dolphins and why I'm eventually going to pick the Bengals, as we all know, is just that the Dolphins defense has been so bad. They have been like the bend but don't break, except they are bending to the point where it is almost dangerous and then somehow not break him. And we saw him give up 497 yards to the Bills. They are giving up 413 yards per game, second most in the NFL. You can't live on the edge the whole season and not have it come back and bite you. I think that's my thing, especially when you're playing teams that have good offenses like, you fought on 21 against the Ravens. You somehow pulled it out against Lamar Jackson. Fine. You somehow pulled it out against the Bills, even though they doubled your yardage total. That style of play catches up to you. And so, maybe it will be a 2 or 3 point game, but I just think that the Bengals are coming out fired up. This is, usually you're the AFC champion, the defending AFC champion. You're the one with the target on your back. But for this game, it feels like the Dolphins are the team with the target on the back because they're the only undefeated team in the AFC. And so I just think that the Bengals are a well-rounded team, even though their record does not show that. They are one of just 4 teams in the NFL that rank in the top 10 of both fewest points surrendered by the defense and most points scored by the offense. 2 of the other ones are the Eagles and Jacksonville, and I can't remember the 4th one off the top of my head. But so all the teams that are there are good. That's the bottom line. And so I think I like the Bengals. I liked it better on Sunday night when it was 2.5. I loved it at 2.5.
Yeah.
Now I still like 3.5, but I don't love it.
Yeah, I'm with you too. If this gets anything below 3, I'm probably shifting and leaning a little bit more towards Cincinnati. I just like getting the field goal with the hook there. But I think you make a good point with kind of water potentially finding its level with these Dolphins because, yeah, they are pulling out these close games and they're 3-0, so you got to give them credit. But if you dig a little bit deeper in that game against Buffalo, they were dominated everywhere other than the scoreboard. I mean, like you said, 497 yards of total offense. The Buffalo Bills were 11 of 18 on 3rd down. The Bills had 31 first downs in that game. They dominated time of possession. It's just things kind of just got away from them towards the tail end. So I guess maybe you give a little bit of credit for the Dolphins for clamping down in the final kind of second half there, I guess. But ultimately, because I mean, really, it was only 3 points. I mean, I know they gave up the 5 points with the safety, but that was more their doing. I mean, it was just a butt punt more than anything else that contributed to those points being put on the board. But I do think that there's something to be said for water finding its level a little bit with these Dolphins because they have been winning and coming out on the positive side of these super close games that feel like they could be basically a coin flip. But I'm gonna watch it. If this turns into -2.5, or I mean for +2.5 or -2.5 for Cincinnati, I think I lean more towards Cincinnati. But if you're giving me a field goal with a hook and Tua's ready to go here, I do like what they're doing offensively.
Yeah, and you know what? The Dolphins can also make a statement here because look, we have everyone second guessing their wins. Like, oh, the Dolphins actually good because they just barely beat the Ravens. Well, they came back from 21 points. That's impressive. Well, they just barely beat the Bills. Well, they gave up 500 yards, but they still won. So it's weird to talk about the Dolphins, and I think that people, especially, I get a lot of tweets accusing me of hating the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are going to win 10 games, 11 games. I think they're going to make the playoffs at this point. I think they look good. I am just saying you cannot live on the edge the whole season because eventually it bites you in the butt. It's Tyler talking about the water leveling. It's the law of averages. Everything equals out. You can't win all these games like this without it taking its toll. So who knows? Maybe the Dolphins make a statement win. Maybe they win a game by 2 touchdowns and silence everyone by going into Cincinnati and making the White Tigers extinct.
I still like the uniform. They win the uniform battle, unless the Dolphins come out with the throwbacks. I don't know how you can't like what Cincinnati's doing with those white Tiger unis.
If the Dolphins came out with a throwback, it would go down as the best uniform game in the history of football.
Oh yeah, that's up there. The teal, oh yeah, that is some good stuff there. But I love it. They look mean, those uniforms for Cincinnati. I think it's about time we get those.
And unfortunately, the only way to see those uniforms is on Amazon Prime. So get your Prime subscription going so you can watch the game on Thursday. Although it will be on free over-the-air television in Cincinnati and Miami in the local markets.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the final game, which might be my second favorite game of the week. I didn't even make this list. These games just show up. Billy's reading my mind. We're just on the same page. Billy, his second show ever, and we're just already on a mind meld here. This is insane. It is the Doug Peterson revenge game. We have Dougie P going back to Philly to face the Eagles with his suddenly resurgent and unstoppable looking Jacksonville team. Tyler, what do you think about this game, man?
It's weird because I don't want to overreact to either team. Like, I feel like either way, I'm kind of like, okay, the Eagles are unbelievable. I picked them as the number 1 seed in the NFC going into the year, so I kind of feel like I have to continue to back that, especially now that they're 3-0. But you also don't want to overreact too much to a 9-sack performance against Carson Wentz last week. Unless they're just like, hey, we're slaying all these dragons. We're taking down Carson Wentz. We'll take down Doug Peterson. We're just kind of going to mow down through all these guys. But I don't want to overreact too much to them. But I also don't want to overreact too much to what Jacksonville was able to do in Los Angeles last week. Despite being a super impressive win, they absolutely blew out the Chargers. But it was without Keenan Allen. Joey Bosa gets hurt in that game. Obviously, we know what the situation is with Justin Herbert with his fractured ribs. So you almost have to give that a grain of salt as well. I think I lean Philadelphia here, especially with it -6.5. We're still getting it below the touchdown mark. So I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. But yeah, I guess there is that revenge narrative, and the Jaguars are playing really well under Doug Peterson now, and they could be a sleeper team in the AFC South. But I just think Philadelphia, to me, is a legitimate NFC number 1 seed threat, as I thought in the preseason. I still think that now. And you're laying 6.5 at Lincoln Financial. It's a rowdy environment. I think that's a place that I'd feel comfortable laying those points.
But who knows more about Lincoln Financial than anyone is Doug Peterson.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
He's got a statue outside the stadium, Tyler. He knows exactly what's happening here. Yeah, well, you don't want to overreact to the Chargers game, but what about the game before that? I mean, they won 24-0 they have won 2 straight games by more than 3 touchdowns. And I believe they are just the second team in NFL history to win multiple games in a row by 24 or more points in which they were an underdog in both games. There's a lot to that stat, so I hope that made sense.
But I mean, we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles being 3-0. The Jaguars could be 3-0 if it wasn't for Carson Wentz making a bunch of throws in that second half in week 1. So, I mean, as weird as it sounds, you're talking about potentially 2 undefeated teams. I just find it fascinating to kind of see how, I guess both of these teams, I guess more Jacksonville could really prove themselves with a win here in this game. Philadelphia, I think if they win, we're just going to continue to say that they're a hot team in the NFC, poised to potentially be the top seed, certainly, possibly win that division as long as Dak Prescott continues to be out for Dallas and all of that. But if Jacksonville goes into Philadelphia and wins outright, you're really talking about them as a legitimate, playoff contender, AFC South division leader. You're starting to have those conversations, especially with Tennessee kind of faltering. Indianapolis got a win last week, but haven't been as impressive as we've seen thus far. If you're talking long-term odds, I mean, this could solidify a lot of things for Jacksonville.
Yeah, and you mentioned that they could be undefeated. This was a Jacksonville team that was beating the Commanders in week 1, 22-14 with 10 minutes left to play. And, going into the season, expectations weren't high for Jacksonville. And that was the game where you're still kind of feeling out your new offense, your new coach, you're kind of working out some wrinkles. And apparently they worked them out quite quickly because now they have just rolled in their past 2 games. And so this is just an interesting matchup to me because Jacksonville has just looked so good on offense. I mean, obviously their defense is playing well because they've only given up 10 points in the past 2 weeks, but they're just shutting down the run. We know the Eagles love to run, and I think this will be one of those games where Dougie P is going to say, you know what, I'm going to make Jalen Hurts beat me. I know he's played really well this season. I'm not going to let him run around in the pocket and scramble for 60 yards. I'm going to make him only beat me with his arm. Let's see if he can do that. And, based on what Jalen Hurts has done so far, he might be able to do that. But Doug Peterson has to feel good going in there with the talent he has. And so, long story short, or did I just make a short story long? I'm not sure. I am grabbing Jacksonville here. I mean, 6.5 points for a team that has just been rolling. We're going to have to agree to disagree, Tyler.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's a tough one because we're going to look back. We could look back at this game 3 weeks from now, and if Jacksonville all of a sudden wins this game and they just turn out to be this like legitimate surprise force, and really Urban Meyer was the problem all along, and they're actually are that team. Trevor Lawrence is that number 1 caliber generational type quarterback. You're looking back at that and saying, yeah, you were getting 6.5. Of course you were. Of course you're going to take that. So, and the same thing with Philadelphia. If all of a sudden they're dominant again, they sack Trevor Lawrence 10 times in this game like they did Carson Wentz last week. You're like, all right, this team's legit. It's both of these teams are going to be in a very favorable spot at the end of the year, I think. I think both of them are set up for success.
Absolutely. Philadelphia also has a small chance of rain. Not small, it's about 40%. And so that's something that could impact the over-under, but it's under 50. It's at 48 right now. So I have my final score prediction is 27-24. So I guess that means I'm taking the over, Tyler.
And the over is 5-1 in the Eagles' last 6 home games.
Ooh, that's a fun fact. That is a fun fact. Here is another fun fact. It's time for a break. So we're going to take one right now. When we get back, we will talk MVP odds and Super Bowl odds. And welcome back. Someone asked in the chat last night, Tyler, Brinson, why do you look so dumb when you take these breaks and there's no break? Well, the thing is, if you're watching on YouTube, there's no break because the show's live. But if you're listening on the audio version, there is a break in there thanks to our very skilled producers.
And so if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, you're getting the uncut version of the Pick Six podcast. That's not only do you get to see us, you get to see our awkward 2-second little pause, which is very exciting.
Tuesdays with Tyler, uncut. Everybody, show up. All right. We're now here to talk about some MVP candidates. Lamar Jackson has been going off this season, but he is not the favorite right now. Let's take a look at the top 6 favorites. We'll start with the top 2, and then we'll go 2 by 2 here. So right now, the 2 favorites are, you know what? We're not even going to do that. I'm just going to ask you out of this list of top 6, who would you put your money on right now? We have Josh Allen plus 300. Patrick Mahomes plus 550, Jalen Hurts plus 700, Lamar Jackson plus 700. You got him up there right now. Tua Tagovailoa at plus 1,400, Justin Herbert at plus 1,600.
I mean, I don't know
You can go off the
how.
list too if you want. If you got the list
Yeah,
in front
yeah.
of you.
I mean, sure. Let's go down the list. Let's go with. No, I'm only kidding. They're not going to go with Jared Goff. I think that I don't know how you don't go with Lamar Jackson here. I mean, he's just absolutely a video game player right now. I watched him pretty intently last week. I've watched him the last couple of weeks, but he had every answer that the Patriots and Bill Belichick were throwing at him defensively. Whenever they were when it felt like they had a perfect scheme to sack him or take him down, all of a sudden he's scrambling, he's down the field for 40 yards. And a lot of it, too, wasn't even just scrambling and gaining those yards rushing, over 100 yards rushing in that game. There were some design runs in there that were just world beaters. You couldn't do anything about it. You tip your cap and you're like, all right, this dude's just amazing. And then on top of it, he's throwing unbelievable throws to Mark Andrews for a couple of touchdowns in the first half. He has an unbelievable corner end zone throw to Duvernay that basically was only where he could do it. He also had a money throw to Rashard Bateman that would have went for a touchdown had it just been a smidge, like a fingernail closer to his hands. That would have been a huge throw for him in that game. He's just locked in. He's a dude that obviously the narrative's there. He wants to get paid. He wants that new contract, and he's playing like it. And if all of a sudden he adds a second MVP to his resume, and the Ravens are a number one seed or winning the AFC North, he's setting himself up for just an unbelievable payday. And so with that type of motivation, obviously all these quarterbacks want to win. Like it's not, that's nothing new here. But when you're talking about these players in contract years, there's always that little extra boost. And Jackson is certainly playing like a guy that wants to get paid. I don't think it's going to let up anytime soon. And the Ravens have a pretty easy schedule. If I remember correctly, I'm going to pull it up. But for me, he's my clear-cut pick right now. I don't know how you fade him in this spot, especially at 7-1 still. I think that's great odds.
Yeah, it is crazy that he's been putting up these huge video game numbers, as you mentioned, and his odds, he's not close to Josh Allen now, who is the favorite in terms of odds. And yeah, like you said, the Ravens, after they play the Bills and Bengals over the next 2 weeks, they get the Giants, the Browns, a Thursday game against Tampa, but then the back end of their schedule, they get the Panthers. They still have games against the Falcons. So, yeah, Lamar definitely has a chance to put up some impressive numbers. I think the crazy thing about him is that he literally leads the NFL in touchdown passes with 10. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns, so he has 12 total. He has more total touchdowns by himself than 30 of the NFL's 32 teams. You want to add to that?
Yeah, and I'm just saying, and he's playing behind an offensive line that has, I think it's a third or fourth string left tackle right now with Ronnie Stanley out. So you put all those numbers into perspective. He's also doing it behind an inferior, without his all-pro left tackle and Ronnie Stanley.
And then on top of that, he is also tied as the NFL's 5th leading rusher. I mean, how many times can you take a long shot bet on a quarterback leading the NFL in rushing and not feel completely stupid about it? You can literally bet on Lamar Jackson to lead the NFL in rushing. He is plus 5,000. Currently tied with Christian McCaffrey as the NFL's 5th leading rusher. And you look at other names on this list besides Lamar, because, what if he happens, if he can't stay this hot? Jalen Hurts has obviously been awesome. I wouldn't feel too comfortable with Justin Herbert right now with his rib injury messing things up. So probably wouldn't think about him. But Aaron Rodgers, I will say this about Aaron Rodgers. I went up and looked at where his odds were at this exact point last season, and he had the 9th best odds. He was plus 1,600 going into week 4 last season, so it seems like a total long shot. The favorites at that point were Mahomes, Brady, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, all ahead of Lamar Jackson, all ahead of Rodgers, and he ended up winning it. So it is kind of hard to judge these things this early because someone could come out of nowhere, but it does really feel like that Lamar, Jalen, and Josh Allen have kind of set themselves away from everyone else.
And what's crazy, I was just looking it up too, because we obviously, we write a million of these like prediction pieces going into the year. And I did one, I polled everybody, and we're, just looking at what the odds were. I was looking to see what Jackson's was. And as of, what was it, September 2nd, he was 20-1 to win the MVP. So if you're sitting on that ticket going into the year, I mean, you are just feeling fantastic about where you are. But if you want to talk about maybe somebody coming out of the woodwork and just like, who is hot, did we really see this coming? And if you want to look at value, yeah, you could maybe do Tua Tagovailoa 14-1. I don't really like that one because I do think, as we were talking earlier, at some point things are going to kind of find its level there, and I'm certainly not going to take him at those odds. I don't think that they're pretty strong. What about Trevor Lawrence?
Oh, I was going to say Trevor Lawrence.
50-1? I mean, if all of a sudden, like, let's play it out like we were talking earlier. If they go into Philadelphia and win, or at least keep it close in cover, and they continue this momentum that they have with Doug Peterson, who, again, Coach of the Year candidate was someone who I was hot on going into the year and still should be. I don't even know if those odds are even available still, on Caesars. But
I feel bad giving all the love to the Jags on this episode, since that was literally Brinson's. He's been riding they're going to win the AFC South train since early July. And here we are still talking about him 3 weeks.
And if they do win the AFC South and Lawrence puts up the numbers and looks like the guy that we saw last week in Los Angeles, he's going to have a resume. He's going to have a case, which again, right now, 50-1, I feel like I'm playing that. Is it 51? Excuse me. Yeah, no, it is 50-1. Yeah.
50-1.
I mean, that one, I don't know why you don't sprinkle a little something on there right now, because the tides could very easily swing. It's only week 4, and he's looked the part so far. I mean, we just talked about it. They could be 3-0. And as much as Doug Peterson's going to get a lot of credit to that, you're going to look at Trevor Lawrence and say, all right, he's a number 1 pick. He's the generational type of prospect that we were billing him as coming into the league. If he starts to scratch that surface of his potential down the stretch run, and Jacksonville is kind of frisky, I think he's going to get some consideration.
Let's see. And we got everyone, we're having a big debate in the comment section about Cooper Rush's MVP odds, with Rush coming out of nowhere. Clearly should be the MVP favorite. I don't know where these odds came from. He's won 2 games in a row. He's never lost a game in his career. How is this guy not the favorite? He's going to keep winning.
See if I can find him.
He's going to out Dak. Dak took Tony Romo's job. Now Cooper's going to take Dak Prescott's job. You know what? Cooper Rush doesn't even have the best MVP odds of someone named Cooper, because Cooper Kupp has better MVP odds.
And I think Amari Cooper does too. I'm trying to see if I can find him.
So he is way down there. But the thing I love about the Trevor Lawrence one is that if you actually think Jacksonville can win the division, and it feels like they absolutely have a shot, if this team goes 11-6, Trevor Lawrence is going to get votes. And so if, let's say, he has similar stats to Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, I think voters would go with Trevor Lawrence for turning a team around that has been so bad, kind of the pity vote, if you will, except that with similar stats, it's not really pity. It's just, hey, let's get some new blood. Let's give it to someone else. And yeah, so I think 50-1 is fantastic there. I also think as the Bengals homer, I am obligated to point out that Joe Burrow sitting there at 25-1. Very interesting.
Like, I'm looking at Matthew Stafford 30-1. Like, let's just say I have $100 to throw down on a future kind of long shot dart. Am I going to put it on Matthew Stafford, or am I going to put it on Trevor Lawrence at 50-1? I'm putting it on Lawrence.
Absolutely. I would put it on Lawrence.
Lawrence is closer to Russell Wilson's MVP odds at 60-1 than he is at Matthew Stafford's. And I think he's heads and shoulders above both of those guys.
Well, the thing is, and you look at all the guys ahead of Lawrence, Tom Brady's plus 3,000. If I had $100 and to pick Lawrence or Brady, I'm putting the money on Lawrence. Lawrence or Stafford? Lawrence. You just said that. Lawrence or Burrow? Probably Lawrence, just because I'm getting double the odds. Burrow's plus 2,500. Right. Lawrence is plus 5,000. Lawrence or Herbert? Lawrence easy, right?
Yeah.
Lawrence or Aaron Rodgers?
I'm putting Lawrence. Again, value is a factor, but even still, I mean, I don't know if I want to go this far, but
go. We're going as far as we can. Brinson's not here to rein us in.
Like, I would feel better. Like, I would bet Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. If you all of a sudden put Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence, and again, value is part of this. I don't know if I'm really leaning towards Patrick Mahomes there. I think I'm going Lawrence.
I mean, I don't disagree. And here's the even crazier part. We've been talking about Trevor Lawrence's odds are plus 5,000. or 50-1. Here is who he has the same odds as, and you would never bet these other two guys. Kirk Cousins is also at plus 5,000. Kyler Murray is also at plus 5,000. Derek Carr also at plus 5,000. Those are the four guys at plus 5,000. It is a no-brainer. There's no way you would bet any of those three guys over Trevor Lawrence. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, again, Mahomes, if he is able to keep up I'm looking at his stats now just to kind of, make sure I'm level-headed on it. But, if he continues to play the way he's playing with the cast of characters, and if they're able to win that tough division in the AFC West, he'll certainly get consideration. But I'm talking about value. I think that those odds are a little screwed up for Trevor Lawrence, and maybe we're a little bit too high and too reactionary off of that win in Los Angeles, but they've looked good so far. And if they just play well in Philadelphia, I'm not saying they have to win, but if they keep things close and he continues on the track and they win that division, yeah, there's going to be a conversation that he's an MVP candidate.
All right, let's move on from the MVP talk and go to our final topic of the day, Super Bowl favorites. We are heading into week 3. There are 2 undefeated teams, and neither of them are listed as one of the top 3 favorites. We've got the Bills up top at plus 450. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. If you are listening on audio, you cannot see this. The Chiefs are second at plus 800. The Buccaneers third at plus 900, tied with the Eagles, who are also plus 900. Then the Packers round out the top 5 at plus 1,000 or 10-1 odds. What do you see there? What catches your eye? Any long shots you like?
My dream Super Bowl matchup, and I've said this a bunch of places. I've texted it with my friends. If the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles meet in the desert, it's going to be like Mad Max. The Eagles fans and Bills Mafia in Glendale is going to be the funnest, craziest Super Bowl. I mean, I think the NFL might have to shut down if that happens, just because of the absolute madness that would go down. That's what I'm rooting for.
Well, that's the perfect state to have it, because Arizona State's a party school. University of Arizona, the Eagles and Bills fans will be on campus just drinking all the alcohol, and then all right, partying all week.
I mean, did you see the video of Fort Lauderdale, the Fort Lauderdale strip of all right there, the Elbow Room, all of Bills Mafia just taking over the beach last week in Miami or in Fort Lauderdale? If all of a sudden, that was for a week 3 game down in Miami. If all of a sudden you're talking about a Super Bowl, it's going to be the entire, upstate New York, all of Buffalo in descending onto the desert, and Philadelphia fans are right there too. So I just think that'd be awesome to watch. And Philadelphia 9-1, Buffalo, it's a favorite. It's always tough to, just go chalk with, at plus 450. Philadelphia, talking about going chalk, they have the second best or tied for the best odds in the NFC to win the Super Bowl this year, but I do like them at 9-1. If we're looking at long shots, I would still, and it depends on how we qualify long shot, but if we're going to look at someone who's, I would say, 20-1 or better, or, whatever, however you want to quantify that, maybe the San Francisco 49ers, 25-1. I know it was kind of a slog last week against Denver, but I feel like any team that plays Denver kind of just gets dragged down to their level and for some reason can't do anything offensively. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get better with his offense. You got to remember, he didn't have a playbook all summer, let alone practice with the team as they were trying to figure out his future with the team. I think that as they start to get a little bit better or a little bit more chemistry, I think that gets a little bit better. So 25-1 would be a little bit interesting. I'm going to leave the Bengals for you at 30-1. I'll let you hit that later. But I think that that's probably where I'm at. It's a little bit of a weird subject, but I think the Cleveland Browns at 50-1 is one to pay attention to, because that division is still kind of...
Tyler, don't get crazy.
It's still in a kind of a
Getting
state
this
of
crazy,
flux.
you got to end the podcast. You can't be this crazy.
I mean, we're getting crazy. Why not? We're a bunch of 50-1s. But I'm just saying, the Cleveland Browns, they're above 500. If they're able to stay afloat until Deshaun Watson gets back, obviously on the football field, a clear upgrade, one of the more talented quarterbacks in the NFL. If they're able to sneak in, they have the defense, they have the stars offensively, especially on the ground, to really make an impact, which wins playoff football. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, running the football and playing strong defense, that will win you games in December, January, and possibly even February. So I'm not going to say that they're going to maybe win the Super Bowl, but that one I would, if they continue to stay around 500, that's one that you maybe kind of sprinkle something on for. All right, what happens when Deshaun Watson comes back? How much does he improve that team?
But also, what about the one we've been talking about the whole podcast? Jacksonville at 60-1 plus 6,000.
I don't know if I want to go that. I mean, if that happens, we're cashing on Trevor Lawrence MVP. We're cashing on Doug Peterson Coach of the Year.
And you're retiring. That's what's happening.
It's basically it. I guess sorry, CBS. I love doing it for you, but man, I'm sitting on more money than I would if I had Bitcoin.
This would be like when Biff Tannen in Back to the Future 2 made his whole fortune from gambling. That's Tyler Sullivan.
I gotta call it an almanac.
Yeah.
But for me, it's if we're talking more realistic, Philadelphia for me looks like a really fun play. I think it's gonna be a good team to watch all year. 9-1 right now. It's not the best, but for me, that team, and then if you're going a little bit further down, Baltimore's another one, 14-1. If Lamar continues on this pace.
Yeah, and then I will say, looking at last year's odds after 3 weeks, the Rams, who ended up winning, had the third best Super Bowl odds at plus 800. The Bengals, who got to the Super Bowl, were nowhere near the top. And this is why you talk about, is there a dark horse I should grab? After 3 weeks, the Bengals were plus 12,500. You could still get 125-1 odds on the Bengals last season after 3 weeks. And so that's where you look at, hey, is the AFC so wide open that a team could sneak in there? And that's why talking about the Browns or talking about Jacksonville isn't crazy. The Bengals at 30-1 is interesting. And I will throw it out because I am obligated to, because they were my preseason Super Bowl pick. The Denver Broncos are 22-1. Am I happy with my pick right now? I'm not thrilled, but they're 2-1. They're tied for first place, and I don't think the offense can get any worse. And so if it slowly gets better every week and they keep winning games 12-11 and 13-12 and 14-10, that's fine. Those are all wins. They count the same. And like Tyler said, once you get to the playoffs, you have a good running game. Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, a good defense. They clearly have that because they're winning games even though their offense can't score. You can win in the playoffs.
Well, let's play the Cincinnati 2023 game. Out of these two teams that are plus 12,500, who do you think is more likely to reach the Super Bowl? There's one in the NFC, there's one in the AFC. The Detroit Lions or the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're the only two teams with those same exact odds that the Cincinnati Bengals had last year before they went on a Super Bowl run. So it's the Detroit Lions in the NFC or the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who is most likely?
Go with the Lions because I don't think the Steelers can get to the playoffs. I think the AFC is too stacked. It's just too tough. And the Lions just have the pluckiness that the Bengals had last year with their offense scores points, and sometimes that's enough. I mean, they're the second highest scoring team in the NFL. It's something incredibly high. They've scored. They just keep scoring. And so, eventually they'll start closing out and winning these close games that the Vikings game, they probably should have won. Probably should be 2-1, but they are not. So I'm going to go with the Lions. I think the plucky Lions, I'm going to stick with the cat theme too. If the Bengals did it last year, the Lions are due.
Ooh, I like that.
How you feel?
I mean,
which one do you like?
I'm with you. I'm with the Lions too. I mean, they have just been they play so hard under Dan Campbell. And so, you look at dating back to last year, 14-6 against the spread. I mean, and that's the second best odds, the second best ATS record, in the NFL since then. I think it's only Dallas that has a better record than them. They're above Green Bay, above Miami, above Cincinnati, all those teams in terms of, a better cover percentage. They just keep these games tight, and it always feels like they're on the losing end of it. So, I mean, like we're talking about, if water finds its level with the Lions, well, then they're going to stack up a bunch of wins. The only thing that I'll say about Pittsburgh is if you get TJ Watt back and he continues to be a defensive player of the year type of guy, and he continues to take your defense to a level that's one of the best in the NFL. And I mean, we all know this, an elite pass rush can derail a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson. So it might be tough in the AFC, but they do have the personnel to combat those quarterbacks or at least limit them a little bit. And then the wild card for Pittsburgh is if all of a sudden they switch it up and go to Kenny Pickett and he's awesome, well, then you might be going on a kind of a crazy run there with a young quarterback. I know it's obviously super foreign for a rookie let alone, a week 1 starting rookie as opposed to insert in the middle of the season rookie to take your team super far. But even if he's average and gets the ball into the skill position player's hands, this offense can put up points.
Although I will pour a little cold water on that fun explanation. No rookie quarterback has ever led their team to the Super Bowl.
It's so tough to do.
We all want to see Kenny in there, though, don't we?
Yeah. I think it's happening at some point, right?
I mean, it sounds like all the offense players in Pittsburgh are just blaming Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator.
That's also true.
Who knows what's going to happen with them? But yep, we're both on. Could you even imagine the Lions in the Super Bowl? I don't think fans in Detroit would even know what to do. They would think like they were being punked by the NFL. Is this real? Like, where's Ashton? This is no way this is happening. The Lions are not in the Super Bowl. This is not real.
Rihanna just comes out at halftime and says, "Psych."
Yeah, this is not a real game. This is a preseason game. Well, all right. Of course, we would end with Lions Super Bowl talk, because how else could we end Tuesdays with Tyler? For Tyler Sullivan, I am John Breech. I think Brinson will be back tomorrow, but don't hold me to that because I don't have his schedule. I cannot keep track of Brinson. No one can. But someone will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for listening.